That's what was causing the virality of the video.
Wedding photographers and videographers are a little bit apprehensive.
But I got I think it's like 8.4 million on that.
Is this guy really tall, or is it the angle? Because I'm like 5'9" on a good day.
The person who's best to compare myself to is me.
We remove our opinion on all of the content.
With shock horror, my Insta360 caught the whole thing.
How's it going, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Get Seen, Get Booked podcast for wedding photographers and wedding videographers. I'm super excited about the episode that we have today. We have Adam Lowndes from Adam Lowndes Photography, so I'm just going to bring him on. Good morning, Adam. How you doing, mate?
Hey, not too bad. How are you?
Yep, very well. Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah, that's one I always forget to say, to be honest. I'm always like, say everything, and then at the end of it, I go, oh, Happy New Year. I don't know about you.
Yeah, this is one of the first ones we're recording after the new year, so I thought I would get that in. I hope you had a good one, but just for all the listeners, I don't know if you just want to introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a wedding photographer from Staffordshire in the UK, and that's pretty much it.
We first connected inside, because me and you both have very similar kind of Facebook groups. I know you've got a Facebook group that focuses more on the organic side of social media, specifically things like TikTok, which you're going to get into this podcast. And we have the Get Seen, Get Booked Facebook group, which I suppose focuses more on the paid ad side of things. And one of the reasons we wanted to get you in today was to really talk about your growth that you've had organically on social media, specifically TikTok. So I don't know if you just want to kind of tell us a little bit how you got started, why you got started, how things have gone on TikTok. Because one thing that when I was looking at your profile, I know that you've grown to nearly 20,000 followers and you've had nearly 2 million likes. So it would be good just to give a little insight of how you managed to do that.
Yeah, so it all sort of stemmed from Instagram, to be honest. I started using Instagram pretty late to the game, to be fair, and my work at the time wasn't that great and I wasn't doing too many weddings. And then when I actually got into my Instagram, it was already oversaturated, really, and it's even more oversaturated now. So then I started to use Instagram and trying to figure out ways to get around the oversaturation of it, and that was being unique in terms of the content I was making. And then it came around that I was looking at TikTok and one of my friends was like, have you been on this? And I was like, oh, it's just for kids, right? And he's like, oh,
Yeah.
I know I think you'd really like it. So I remember downloading it and I was like, yeah, this is definitely on my street. And I was like, maybe I could be a bit more of a front runner on this platform. And, whereas I missed out on the early doors of Instagram, maybe I can, be a bit of a sort of front runner with this. So yeah, I started up on there and I thought I'm just going to start testing some stuff on there, dropping a few videos here and there, seeing what sticks, seeing what doesn't. But most of all, what kind of helped me get to where I am now is just digesting content from other people and sort of seeing what makes people tick and respond to content and things like that. So yeah, I've watched more than my fair share of millions of videos on there myself, and I'm definitely a little bit addicted to that platform, and I love it so much more than Instagram. And there's so many powerful creators on there, and it's not just full of people dancing as I think people assume. To be honest, I don't really ever see people dancing on there. It's more other stuff as such. But yeah, my growth has sort of come from there, and then things really took off when I got a behind-the-scenes camera. So I got an Insta360 X3. Well, it was X2 at the time. And then recently I've got the X3 and a pile of other stuff as well. But yeah, that really helped me diversify what I wanted to share and really make it a lot easier to capture content that was going to be sort of interesting and unique compared to other people out there.
When did you get started with TikTok? So what happened for me was, I remember in lockdown and stuff, I was getting hammered with Facebook ads from TikTok. And I kind of had a bit of a misconception like you, that I thought it was just kids dancing on the platform. And when I moved across to it, especially during lockdown, it was very much a platform which was for entertainment. But very quickly, I started to realize this is going to turn into a business platform. I started seeing loads of other businesses advertising on it. So that's when we moved across to start using TikTok as a platform. I suppose it was just after lockdown. When did you get started with it?
So yeah, it was 2021. I was kind of digesting stuff. I think I probably dropped my first video around the same time as well. But I wouldn't really say I hit the ground running until it was mid 2022. So It's only been about a year and a half now of consistent. But I saw one video which said you always see these videos which was like, here's how to get viral, here's how to do this, here's
Mhm.
how to do that. And sometimes some of them catch my eye. And one of them was sort of saying, I think it was Mr. Beast actually. I think it was a YouTube thing, and he was saying, don't expect anything from your first video. He's like, don't expect anything from your first 99 videos. He said, once you get to that 100th video, if it's still not working for you, then there's something dreadfully wrong with what you're trying to do and stuff. And I was sort of thinking of that and thinking, yeah, maybe I can do that. And then I saw another video where it said, I'm posting one video a day to see how this goes. And I think when you add that consistency to it, it really sort of like helps you like supercharge it. So then I said to myself, I was like, right, I'm going to post a piece of content every single day for a month, and then that turned into 2 months, and then I found sort of my voice on there.
Mhm.
So it was a lot easier then to make content that was then sort of my style, and it didn't take much work as such. It was just so much more easier. So yeah.
So you mentioned that you use an Insta 360, and I know you can use like you can. I know there's people who are using the phones to capture or GoPros, but the Insta 360 is quite an interesting one. But what I'm interested to know is a lot of your stuff is like behind the scenes kind of content. Do you do other types of concepts as well, or is all of your content just behind the scenes stuff from weddings?
Yeah, so majoritively, like that's what people love because it just gives a really honest insight. And whereas like we're going to take this video now, for example, and edit it down to the best stuff, sort of thing. I think with the behind the scenes stuff, it's just what happens. So it's very sort of raw, and people love seeing that kind of side of weddings. We can tend to glamorize weddings a bit much, and sometimes it's just nice to see like a normal wedding day and what's kind of happening on it. So yeah, I know that's like a big thing that people come to my profile for. But I also try to do like what I like to call like a
Hmm.
series in my head, which is I'll take like a concept and then I'll sort of run with it. So every now and again I'll do things like equipment videos, and they're like face to camera videos. So I just do them here in my office. Just talking about the equipment I use, and that's normally in response to people asking questions. That sort of gives me the idea for that, and I do like doing them ones, but they don't garner as much attention. And then just recently, I've started to notice like an upturn in photo posts. So people will be sharing photo posts, and I was like, I could probably do this. So people were doing like a how I edited this photo, and they'd share like a raw version of the photo, and then on the next swipe it'd be the raw version with like loads of like analytical bits all over it, so loads of little scribblings of, oh, here's where I'm going to make it more contrasty, here's where I'm going to do that, and then in the final it'd be the actual photo. So then I was like, well, I reckon I could do that for like technique. So I've started doing that recently, and that's been responded to really well. People really love that kind of content. But I am mindful though that the behind the scenes content is what is getting me inquiries at the moment.
Hmm.
Stuff that's aimed at photographers is only going to ever help, for example, my Facebook group or like one workshops that I'm selling, things like that. And that's not my main income at the end of the day. So I have to be careful not to get sucked down the rabbit hole
Yeah.
of making content for other photographers when the payoff is never as much as, my normal wedding work.
So when we're coaching people inside of our like group, our wedding business accelerator, one of the first things we get people to do is to come up with different concepts. So like what we class as a concept from a wedding might be like the confetti shot or walking down the aisle or having the couple outside or even behind the scenes would just be classed as one concept. However, do you have like different concepts for behind the scenes that you've seen work? So is it like you're behind the scenes of confetti or showing you how you work? What's had the most attention? Like what seems to work the best?
I think for me, it's like, it's not just like the camera that's doing. Obviously, it's a bit like the old F1 car adage in it.
Mhm.
The driver's doing like 90% of the work, and yeah, the car's doing maybe 10% of the work, sort of thing. And I think for me, what a lot of people see is they see my behind the scenes content and think, oh, if I get an Insta 360, I'm just going to make this
Yeah.
amazing content and do this. Whereas like my personality is very much lent to being filmed behind the scenes, and there's always been a reason like that I want to show that, mainly because I think, for example, I know other people tell me it's not true, but I think my photos are great, but like they're very sort of similar to everything else out there. So if you were to put my photos next to everyone else's, then they'd look quite similar in a way, especially in this sort of price bracket I'm in. Whereas sharing the behind the scenes content and showing how we create that and showing the fun that we have and the relaxed environment and things like that, that's the additional bit, which is then grabbing eyeballs. It's
Yeah.
my character introduced into that. So it all depends kind of what happens. on the day. But I would definitely say, big moments like first dance or like confetti or these kind of like cornerstones of a wedding day, they do like, garner a lot of attention because like they're parts of the day that people don't often see. How many times have we been to a wedding where no one knows how to do a confetti line or throw confetti even, or they don't even know when they're doing confetti. They just don't experience that every day like we do. And I think sometimes we take that for granted. So yeah, pretty much any time of the day. But if it's something's great happening and within it, then, Brucey bonus really.
Yeah, well, no, it's the behind the scenes stuff's like a really interesting kind of idea, and I totally agree with you. I've looked at a lot of your videos, and the personality comes across like really well. But what I think's really interesting is just even going through like all of the different Facebook groups. We're probably in a lot of the similar ones ourselves. There's still a lot of people in the wedding industry, photographers I find more than videographers, who are kind of against like using social media as a platform, and they'll say things like my ideal avatar isn't on social media. But I feel like if people don't move with the times and get on the social media kind of train, they're going to be left behind and they're going to really struggle in a couple of years. And one thing that I love about the behind the scenes concept is not only are you showing kind of how a wedding operates, and like you touched on a little bit here, it shows how you actually operate. Now, a lot of people, because I spend a lot of time looking at wedding photographers and videographers' website, and I'd say that 99% of people on the about page will have a photograph, just a picture about them, and it'll be a bit of blurb saying, I am this style of wedding photographer and I'm from this area and I do this. However, if people start recording behind the scenes like you have at weddings, and this sort of content can then be used on an about page, because what it does, it gives an insight, and you touched on this already, it gives an insight to how you operate at a wedding. And something happened to me a few years ago when I was at a wedding fair. Bride booked me on the basis she went to us, it's nice to know that I'm not going to have a weirdo at my wedding. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
always really, really stuck with me. And I think what you're doing is giving a real insight to your personality, how a wedding works, but how you actually operate. And I think that's really important.
No, you're so right there. This is exactly, and like, you know, I think within the wedding photography industry, you can charge more because there's a fear. There's a fear from the couple that they aren't going to get what they are after. So when they see your work and they see how professional you are and things like that, yeah, okay, they book you on personality and work and all that, but there's a lot of fear that goes into that booking as well because they want to make sure that it's right. If you can take all that fear away with one behind the scenes video of you managing a part of a wedding day, like group shots, like confetti, like first dance, or anything, where it's normally, a very sort of tense moment, or people have been to these moments before where it's, it's really sort of like impacted the day. How many times do we hear that like group shots have taken over the day, for example? If you can show that you're just like a really normal person and you handle those moments with such ease and calm, then like what's to stop them booking you? You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
such a lift over everyone else. That is like, the fact that couples have seen me at wedding days when they've not actually been to the wedding days I've been at, that makes that booking as strong as someone that's actually seen you at a wedding day as well. And we all know that when you get that inquiry off that couple that go, "Oh, I saw you at Sarah and Johnny's wedding. You're
Yeah.
amazing." It's almost 100% certain it from
Yeah.
the day dot. So if you think like we're sort of leapfrogging all the other photographers just because we're sharing a bit of the fact that we're, like you say, not a weirdo, it's
Yeah.
massively powerful, massively powerful.
If you dive into like reviews and testimonials that people have received from brides and grooms after a wedding, you'll see a lot of the time that they'll say things like, "He got on really well with me friends and family," but this is something they're saying after. So if you're able to actually show people before the wedding that you're definitely going to get on, you've got the personality, you've got the rapport, you're able to manage. But I think more importantly, I think you show that it's like a relaxed atmosphere as well, and kind
Yeah,
of giving fun. And I think it's important because the stress of a wedding, well, you know what it's like. So
yeah,
I think that behind the scenes stuff, it's really important. But I think people, when I talk about creating content for social media, and we cover this in a lot of the Facebook lives that we cover in our group, people automatically think that you have to. I'm always talking about behind the scenes. So if I'm talking about grabbing content at the wedding, they always think I'm talking about just behind the scenes stuff. So for your kind of social media game on other platforms, are you sharing your behind the scenes stuff on other platforms like Instagram and Facebook, or are you also kind of if you go and do a bit of research on other photographers, they'll do like videos and it's like beat, 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 and it'll show then photo, photo, photo. And there's certain trends. Do you do any of that stuff as well?
No, to be honest, like what I found with Instagram in the early days is that platform works best if you just do 100% what you want to do, like
Mhm.
yourself. And if you tread your own sort of path, what I see so much is photographers will say, I'm not getting any traction with these platforms. I'm not doing this. And you look at their profile and it's literally just the same as every single other photographer out there. And you've
Mhm.
just got to make it stand out as much as possible. So I see a lot of kind of like trends or a lot of like beat matching slideshows and things like that. And I just say, no, I'm all right. Thank you. I'm also like to sort of take my sort of like creative brain and sort of rework an idea and sort of think of how I'm going to do it. So yeah, on my Instagram, I share my behind the scenes stuff. I don't share any sort of photographer aimed content on my Instagram. It's all sort of client aimed content.
For
But yeah,
brides.
yeah. So
Yeah.
bride and grooms, yeah,
Yeah.
on my Instagram, it's purely for them. But yeah, on my TikTok, I've got like a kind of like a multi-channel kind of audience. I've got a lot of people who want to be photographers or are interested in photography, and then I've got a lot of people who are just interested in weddings or are getting married. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a different platform. Hence why I do the slightly different content.
And on over on TikTok, what's the highest amount of views that you've had in a single video?
So I got earlier this year, I think it was like March, and it always comes, you never know what video it's going to be. This
Yeah.
is why I'm literally just throwing stuff at the wall quite a lot of the time to see if it sticks. I did a video. It's so when I'm doing group shots, I'll just explain it slightly. Um, I'll do like I'll work down from the biggest amount of people to the like least amount of people. I will never take a list because I just find that it's easier to do it this way. So I'll say, right, okay, all the lounge side of family come over here. Right, okay, aunts and uncles on the ends, and then we'll have close family in the middle. And you're always left with that like boyfriend of the sister who they've been going out for maybe 2 years and they're not really sure if it's like long term. So I always ask them to step off for one. And depending on the crowd, I might say, right, okay, we're going to do a safety shot now. Boyfriend does step off a minute. And it's just a bit of a joke. Some crowds I won't do this with because it'd be a bit more serious and I don't want to hurt people's feelings. But yeah, you like you will know, it's you can always read an audience by that part of the day. And it went down really well and the guy laughed and walked off sort of thing. So I got the behind the scenes footage of that and it's probably only about 10 to 15 seconds long, but I got I think it's like 8.4 million on that.
Wow.
And it got featured on 5 like news sites as well.
Really?
Yeah. It
That's
was
incredible.
absolutely wild. Yeah, so that was insane. Um, and yeah, it was like there was a lot of traction that come off the back of that straight away. I got a lot more followers, obviously. There was a lot of conversation about it on the platform, and I was constantly checking in with the couple, going, "Is this okay? I can take it down at any minute. Don't worry," sort of thing. They were loving it because like their friends that had not even been to the wedding were seeing them on like the Google News page and stuff on their phone, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, that's Hannah and Sam, like just from down the road." Like, so yeah, that was pretty exciting for a bit.
How do you so one of my I've never had anything in the 8 point odd million that you've had. So but I have had a video that's had over 1 million views, but it was actually organically, no paid ads or
Yeah,
anything behind it. And that was on Facebook Reels, not on TikTok. But
yeah.
one thing that I noticed was, and I already kind of knew this, but I didn't think it would happen like on a wedding video, was how brutal some people were in the comment section. And I found myself having to manage a lot of the comments because just some of the things people were saying, they just trolled and they do stuff. What was yours like? What was your reaction? Was it generally positive or did you get many negative comments?
Well, that was why the video did so well, though, because it was so decisive in a way. And I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was so decisive because it's just something that I do every day. It's I think when it comes to weddings, we're just so turned off to like the stuff we do, aren't we? And so basically, there was a group of people that were like really pro this thing that were like, "Oh my goodness, I would have loved this at my wedding because this sister's boyfriend's on all my photos or whatever." And then there were a couple of people that were like, "Oh my gosh, if this happened to me, I'd go and sit in a dark cupboard for 4 hours," that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a real different ends of the spectrum, and that's what was causing the sort of like the virality of the video
Hmm.
in a way.
Yeah.
It was that people were commenting and staying engaged for longer, and if people stay in the comments, reading the comments as well. So if there's a bit of almost like drama in a way, then they want to read what everyone else thinks of the situation. So sort of what caused it to do really well in the first place. So I didn't really want to, for example, turn comments off because I knew that that would be like detrimental to the video. But also, like I said before, the bride and groom's day it was my most important like sort of thing to maintain. I wanted to maintain that they still loved their day, even though they had this crazy moments of virality with this video. And yeah, I just kept checking in on the comments, and TikTok's really good at sort of pushing certain comments to hidden straight away. So they have a little censorship thing on there, and it is when things get really bad that they'll only push that stuff. But then there's also a few others that you have to sort of push out the way. But it was growing so fast, and the popular comments were all quite positive or negative, but quite understanding in a way. So like they say like, oh, well, I wouldn't do this to my wedding, but I can see that it worked well at this, you know, this day sort of thing.
Not malicious, like not malicious
No,
comment. Yeah.
no, I mean, maybe like one or two here and
Yeah,
there,
but
but
not many.
overall, like resoundingly, it was pretty sort of along the line sort of thing. Yeah,
And I suppose a question I've got for you now is, and I think this comes up quite a bit, especially in our group, is people are like, well, when I say people, wedding photographers and videographers are a little bit apprehensive about not only recording, say, behind the scenes footage at a wedding, but then also sharing it on social media. How do you approach it with the bride and groom in terms of the content that you share? Like, because I've got it in my service agreement, my contract, that anything I capture on a wedding, I'm allowed to put it on social
yeah.
media. Of course, if someone asks me to take it down, I would never say, "You've signed me contract.
Yeah.
I'm doing it." But how do you manage that side of things? Do you just upload them, or do you speak to the bride and groom after the wedding? How do you manage that?
I suppose it's a conversation that I'm just constantly having, and my behind the scenes stuff is so out there. You know, if I was just sharing it on TikTok and not on Instagram, then I'd be a bit more upfront about it in terms of telling them, you know, this is going to probably go to millions of views. Maybe if I share it on TikTok, are you okay with that sort of thing? But yeah, I just have the conversation from the start, and a lot of couples are finding me through these videos as well, so
Yes.
they sort of know what to expect to begin with. And I think at first it started off as, oh, I'm just going to film some behind the scenes stuff and I'll send it over to you. And then the couple were like, oh my gosh, we haven't got a videographer. That's amazing. You're at this like priority position within our wedding, you know, following them down the confetti aisle at the front of the ceremony, things like that. And the couple were just happy to have some footage from their day, to be
Yeah.
honest. So there was that. There is parts where I sort of think there was a video I shot last year and it was in a venue, and you know the registrar had done a call out to say, "Hey everyone, no phones in the service. You know, keep your phones in your pocket. We don't need it. This guy's here taking photos. We don't need your phones in the shop." Anyway, people were coming down the aisle. Someone stepped out with a phone. Well, not stepped out, you know, sort of leaned out. And then there was a couple more people after that. And I was like, I could reach one of them and give them a tap on the shoulder. They were that close. So I was just like, oh, just put your phone back in your pocket. You know, shock horror, my Insta 360 caught the whole thing. And it's a really good video because it shows that I'm like being proactive and stopping people going on their phones during the ceremony and things like that.
Mhm.
But this woman is victimized in a way in this video. And it's shown that she's like doing something wrong. And it's like, if I was to put that video on, I would be profiting off of her like looking bad in a way. So
Mhm.
it's about having like I suppose a good moral line in the sand really. And that video I've looked at many a times and thought, is this still not okay to share? And it's definitely not. So I've just deleted it now. Anyway, so yeah.
No, yeah, it's good. And I mean, I feel like the way you've just described that, I mean, I haven't seen the video. I'm just going off your description. I think it sounds okay. It shows that you're managing. But if it is victimizing someone, I suppose you don't really want to, you
I
don't want to put
suppose it's
anyone in that situation.
yeah. You don't ever know which way it's going to go either. And I never thought that video with like 8.4 million views would be so
Yeah.
divisive.
Hmm.
Sorry. So I think if it's on the line, I've got an abundance of content. You know, I've got gigs upon gigs from last year of footage from weddings, and I haven't used anywhere near all of it yet.
Hmm.
So if I've got all that content, then why bother? You know, I'm not struggling for bookings or anything. Like, not that I would do it
Yeah.
out of desperation anyway. But do you know what I mean? Like, what's it going to achieve, really? Yeah, I'm sure
Well, what?
there'll be an opportunity that'll come. Sorry, where it'll be a bit more appropriate to share such a
Yeah,
thing.
no, absolutely. One thing I've got to ask you, right, is how tall are you? Because when I started looking at your videos, right, I thought is this guy really tall or is it the angle? Because I'm like 5'9" on a good day. And then I was looking at your videos and I was like, is it the Insta 360 or has this guy got some leverage over all the guests?
Yeah. So I'm 6'7", which probably actually
Oh,
helps with the videos because then when I've got it up high or whatever, it kind of looks like a drone footage, I suppose. But yeah,
oh, that's
it's
great.
yeah. But my legs do kind of look a bit spider-like when I'm walking on a few of them. But yeah.
That must be so handy because when I'm at a wedding sometimes and I'm trying to get them shots above everyone, being 5'9" on a good day isn't great. So I can see how you can get that extra kind of leverage to get the shots.
Yeah, I didn't realize how good it was until I helped a friend out once second shooting, and we went in her car, and then she opened the boot to get her bag out, and there was a little step ladder in there as well. And I was like, why are you bringing a step ladder to the wedding? She's like, don't ask. And she was
No,
like
I'm
5-0. She was.
I'm not jealous at all.
Mhm.
So moving on a little bit. So obviously you've had like really good success on TikTok, loads of views, following's growing great. What about, because I noticed especially the videos that I had over 1 million views on my Facebook, I couldn't actually account any direct leads that come from the video that went viral. Have
Yeah.
you had many leads and bookings come directly from TikTok?
Yeah, I can tell you exactly what I've had. So, like, the first year I saw anything was 2022. So that I was using it for half a year at that point. I was really going for it, and I only had 8 inquiries, and I managed to book 2 of them. So, wasn't really like when we're talking about like work put in versus output. Probably not the best of starts there, but I was confident that it would turn into something. So then last year it went on to 49 inquiries, but I only then booked 5 of them. Now, bear in mind that I only do 30 to 40 weddings a year. A lot of dates are already taken, or a lot of the time as well. Some of the weddings are outside like where I want to go as well. So
Mhm.
I've got a lot of like sort of promises that I've made myself to stay local and be around a bit more for social opportunities with friends and stuff. So yeah, what's it? But yeah, as well as that though, it actually boosted my Instagram uh, inquiry. So because it's so intrinsically linked, like if you've got a TikTok, you almost like are going to have an Instagram to show the photo side of it. Even though you can share photos on TikTok and carousels and stuff like Instagram, it just goes with it. So yeah, my Instagram bookings picked up by 2, and I had 20 more inquiries on that last year. So first time ever I went over 100 inquiries on Instagram. So yeah, I was super proud of that. But I'm really, really keen that it's actually going to flow really well this year.
Mhm.
Already, I mean, we're on what is it, 4th of Jan. I've had 3 TikTok inquiries and 2 Instagram inquiries already this year, so it's definitely paying off. And I think the main thing is as well, I enjoy doing it, and like
Mhm.
it's not like it's fun to do. I sometimes feel like when I'm writing SEO content for my website, I'm like, this is so boring. Like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Whereas if I could just make a few videos instead, I'd much prefer that.
How are people kind of reaching out to you then? Are you finding that the messaging you directly on TikTok, or have you got a drop down on your website and they're saying I found you on TikTok, or both? How's that working?
Yeah, so this is something I actually want to improve on really. So TikTok, the direct messaging service on TikTok is really limited. You can't share links and stuff, and you can't share like images. So it's not a great platform. So a lot of people jump through to Instagram, and they might drop me a message over there, which is why I said my Instagram is increased, because if they'll sort of say, "Oh, I found you on TikTok and thought come and say hi on here because I'm getting married." But most of all, people just drop through to my inquiry form, which is linked through my bio. So at the moment on Instagram, I'm using their multi-link feature, which
Mhm.
I'm not a massive fan of because it looks quite like it's just sort of like information heavy quite a lot of time. I'd rather have a page on my website with like current links that I'm sort of using, and then I could just link both my TikTok and Instagram to that. Because on my Instagram, I have to use my Linktree account and then send them through there. So it means I have to keep 2 sets of links updated at any one time.
One thing that I notice as well, just off speaking to people in the industry, is like when I ask people, especially when we're doing our Facebook lives inside of a private group, and we get on to talking about leads and managing leads and where they come from, it's really apparent that most wedding photographers and videographers do not track where the leads are coming from. And if I say, how many leads did you get for 2023? How many did you speak to? What's your conversion rate? Most of them just go, I've got no idea. And if I say
Mm.
to people, how many times do you what's your conversion rate? They'll say, oh, well, if I speak to them on the phone, I'll convert 90% of bookings, where I just know that's not true. And it's really down to not tracking. And I know inside of your group that you have on Facebook, that I remember you sharing a document, which is quite a similar process to what I actually do. Can you just talk us through how you track your leads and why you
Yeah.
actually do it?
Yeah, so I think it was in another group ages ago. Someone said that standard question, which I'm sure everyone's seen, which is, how's bookings for everyone at the minute?
Hmm.
And then everyone goes, oh, really good for me, or really bad for me, or whatever. And we all just like talk about it, and sort of like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that like you're going to feel bad about it or good about it depending where you're at in a way.
Hmm.
So rather than read those messages and sort of go off the nature of the industry, which has no reflection on what I'm trying to do. Someone who's booking destination weddings and lives in a destination area and all this kind of stuff, their bookings and inquiries have got no measure to me at all. Like it doesn't. It's totally different. I'm working on local weddings, being home in bed for 10 o'clock, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? That kind of thing. So it's a very different like sort of vibe. So I thought to myself, I was like, right, who's best to like sort of like compare myself to? And the person who's best to compare myself to is me last year. So yeah, it just made absolute sense. So from that day, I sort of set up a big sort of Excel document and I just track everything manually. So when I get an inquiry, I just stick a one in a box. And it's really sort of like, it takes a lot of commitment in a way, but the information that Ian gives me is really important because if things are a bit slow, I can have a look at the document and go, oh, well, this time of last year I was on 30 bookings and now I'm on 32. So
Hmm.
nothing to worry about. Keep doing what I'm doing, sort of thing, unless that persists for a couple of months. And that self reflection is just really important. And, when you get to the end of the year, you've had a great wedding season, but also notice that your inquiries have gone up. What's mine? I'm just reading it straight now. So last year, 130 new, additional inquiries. So last year I had 383 inquiries, which is absolutely insane for someone who's only going to do 10% of those.
Hmm.
Anyway,
No, it's great.
but yeah, but that's like really great and a really great extra goal to kind of push yourself to every year because the more inquiries you kind of get, I sort of see that the quality of the weddings and the quality of bookings just goes up and up and up, and you can obviously charge more because there's higher demand as well. So yeah, it's just a bit of a manual system with some sort of sums at the bottom and some percentages worked out.
How deep do you go? Because I've actually got anyone listening, I've actually got a template for tracking all of your bookings that you can have. So just drop me a message on social media and you can have the template that I actually use. But I'll go as deep as like even trying to separate out like Instagram organic messages, Facebook organic messages. Because obviously we're really heavy on running paid ads, and but a lot of the time people don't take the journey we want them to go on paid ads. They might see one of my Facebook ads,
Yeah.
then they might say, right, I'm going to go and check his TikTok or Instagram. So what I try and do is I try and get a real good understanding of each element where people can come from. How deep are you going with your tracking?
Yeah, I know what you mean by that because like when an inquiry comes through Instagram, but they found me on TikTok, is that a TikTok inquiry or is that an
Yeah.
Instagram inquiry? Like, do you know what I mean? So, at the moment, I just do it at source. So if it's website and they fill the TikTok box in, then it's TikTok. If it's Instagram, even though they come through TikTok, I'll still put it as Instagram and such. But yeah, so I track every month and I do Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, search engine, see me at a wedding, bride book, which is nothing really, but wedding fairs, recommendations from friends, recommendations from suppliers, and recommendations from venues. So I've noticed like the more and more I go, the more and more I split it apart. So I do that every month. And then whenever I book a person, it adds that onto this automatically as well. And then at the end of the year, I've got like a full breakdown as well
Yeah.
of like how many per year. So I can tell you like how many Instagram inquiries I had this time last January and things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And are you using a CRM to manage it? Do you use anything or not? You
No, no,
do.
I'm really basic sort of thing. I just ever since Google introduced scheduled emails, I just use them instead of using a CRM system. I could probably absolutely destroy with a CRM system because my pick time automation is really like top drawer, and I really love
Yeah.
using that. But it's one of those things that it's working for me now, and I'm just fine with where I am at. You know what I mean? I know for sure that as soon as I start using a CRM system that I will gain a benefit from it. It's just I prefer the money in my pocket at the moment.
Yeah, it was one of the biggest changes for me when I moved to a CRM, just for the lead management side of thing, because on my contact form that's on the website, it actually comes from the CRM that I use. But I have a drop down box on there, and you can do this manually even if your website's just built on WordPress. But I have a drop down with basically every option that I want to track from where the leads come from, because but you can get different answers to what you have. And the reason I'm saying this is because you went, I put the source down. So if they found you on TikTok, but they came through Instagram, you log
Yeah.
that as Instagram. When they fill the form in on the website, if you've got a drop down, there's a good chance they might put TikTok, because it's where they originally found you.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
but as long as you're and it's all about just being consistent. As long as you're consistent with your tracking, that's okay, and that's what people do. But I suppose
Exactly.
what the message is here is, if you're not tracking, you need, as a wedding photographer, videographer, you need to start tracking, because for you being able to go back last year, the year before that, the year before that, and be able to see the improvements that you're making. But not only that, you mentioned you can even tell me exactly how many you had last January versus this January. And one question that comes up all of the time in these groups is, what's your busiest month? Well, you can just load your
Yeah.
spreadsheet up and say, well,
Yeah.
February or January, whatever it is,
Yeah, I know, for example, that January is my like busiest month for inquiries, and that I just need to put like loads of work into it. So every January, I absolutely go for it, like, and it
Mhm.
sets me off for the year. That does really well. But like last year, I mean, saying that, you've got to expect that it's not always going to be the same. So like last year, I did really well in May, whereas the year before I didn't. So it's peaks and troughs really. There'll be some things that come by, and like last year I booked 36 weddings. The year before I booked 36 weddings. The year before that I booked 32. I'm reading this straight off the spreadsheet, by the way. And the year before that, I booked 44. So that was like a crazier sort of thing. But yeah, it's as long as you're hitting your targets, and especially as well, you've got to then marry that up to financial targets as well. Because even though I booked 32 weddings 3 years ago, my 36 weddings now, or even my 44 weddings, let's take that one for example, that's 44 weddings at a lower price that I was charging at that time, whereas I'm now booking 36 weddings at a much higher price. So
Mhm.
you've got to be forecasting as well and know where your financials are at. All
And
all boring stuff that no one likes to talk about.
but the thing is, though, for me, the boring stuff is what helps people grow and scale a business. Because if you're not
Yeah.
tracking, like, everything's number driven. Like, even when we're running our ads on social media, like paid ads, I'm talking about here. Even things talking about numbers, is we remove our opinion on all of the content. And you mentioned this earlier, where you said that you never really know what's going to work, and it's because.
Hmm.
And it's hard to do this as being creative people in a like photographers or videographers. We're like, right, we want to put out what best work, and we want to showcase what best work. But a lot of the time, what we think would best work is not what might grab people's attention on social media. Because
100%.
when people are scrolling on social media, they're not in the mindset to look at a full wedding portfolio or a show reel. They want to see like a behind the scenes where you call someone's boyfriend that was a joke, like a safety shot, like you mentioned, because
Hmm.
it's funny and it's entertaining, and that's what people are on social media. So
Yeah.
the first thing on social media is you've got to grab people's attention. Then when they're engaged with like your content, they'll start getting served more of your content. So, and what my point was is that we take kind of our opinion out of it. So if I think one of my videos is going to do well, or if I think it hasn't performed well, but it's a great video, I'll just let the numbers do the talking. It's all data. So, and
Yeah.
it's like and that's why it is boring stuff, but it's so important that everyone tracks and you look at it from like a
Yeah.
numbers and performance perspective. So
Yeah,
go,
I was just
go
gonna
ahead.
say, I was just, oh, because I could talk about this for ages, but there's
Yeah, yeah.
like in this industry, there's people who are artists and then people who are business people,
Mhm.
and like I like to think of myself as a bit of a mix of both, but I know exactly when the art isn't going to perform well and things like that, and I know, for example, like I've shared a post just yesterday about how I do my family group shots, which I've already spoke about, and that's a lot of group shot photos which are face onto camera, which are considered, let's be honest, in the wedding industry world, they're considered boring. They're considered like no one shares them, no one wants to see them. And that post has done really well. It's like one of my best performing posts for a while. And I
Mhm.
think it's about like the content behind it quite a lot of time and what you can kind of say about it. And if you're doing, like I said before, the same as everyone else, then you're just gonna get the same traction as everyone else. You've
Mhm.
got to stand out a bit and do something a bit different. So yeah, 100%. Like, let the stats do the talking and be led by that. Yeah.
And going back to organic content, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
specific about TikTok, but just organic content. If there's people listening who aren't doing it at the minute and they don't know how to get started, have you got any tips for people on how they can get started? How's the best to get into behind the scenes stuff, or just capturing content at a wedding?
Yeah, so the best way to start is just start, but it's like what's it?
Yeah.
Uh, I always find with organic content, it's got to first of all be well received, so by your initial audience. So whoever's following you, whether it's 100 people, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, whatever, that content has got to be well received by that initial audience first, because then if that's ever going to stand the test of time and be found then as like a sort of point of someone finding you, it's got to have done well to begin with. If a piece of content doesn't do well, then it's just going to sink into the ether of the internet and never be seen again. So you've got to have well performing content first that people respond to, and then that can then stand out there and be found by other people. And when I say found by other people, I'm talking about people searching for venues, searching for hashtags, searching, just searching for words like, local photography near me or whatever they're searching for on TikTok or Instagram. Both of those platforms have got almost SEO like capabilities to them now. So if
Mhm.
someone searched, for example, Stoke-on-Trent wedding photographer in the search bar without a hashtag, because you don't need to do that anymore, I'd be surprised if I wouldn't turn up in a few of those posts, which is the city I'm based in at the moment. This is the same with TikTok as well. I always make sure to put all these kind of SEO based words within my captions and things like that. But then also the content is never going to do well if the content isn't great to begin with. So yeah, it's a massive thing.
The good thing as well, the way what I always tell people is, especially for people who are apprehensive about putting content out there, and the thing is always is what's the worst that can happen if you put out a bit of content that's rubbish. What'll happen is TikTok won't serve it out. So if you don't
Yeah.
put out a good bit of content, people just won't see it. So
Yeah.
you don't need to worry about it. It's like, I think the thought of doing the content and putting themselves out there is worse than actually doing it. And
Yeah.
one thing, and this is such a big thing that I know that people do. People might not admit it, but people look at the content and think, how am I going to be judged by other wedding videographers or other photographers? Where you shouldn't care what anyone else thinks, because your content isn't for them. Your content is
Yeah.
for the bride and grooms, and this is why it's not always the best photographers or best videographers who get booked. A lot of the times it's the guys who are doing the best marketing and who are killing the social media game are getting booked, because they're grabbing attention on social, then they're serving them with content. Where the best photographers who aren't on social media, yes, of course, we've got like the 1% who don't even need like advertise and do it because they've got such a big name. But a lot of the time, there's some amazing photographers out there who aren't utilizing social media, who aren't getting the bookings they deserve because people aren't seeing the content as much.
Yeah, no, definitely. Oh, I completely agree with that, everything you've just said. And I think as a wedding industry as well, we have award systems, and quite often those awards can be seen as that person's doing incredibly well, whereas it's really just, oh, we like what they're doing. I think a lot of people will be surprised that a lot of the people who win the big awards within the wedding industry and things like that aren't necessarily got great businesses behind them. Yeah, okay, some of them have, and I don't want to throw down on all of them, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing amazingly well because you've won, say, for example, a Fearless Award or a Nine Dots or a This Is Reportage or maybe even the TWIA. It just means that people like the content you're making, and those people are normally other photographers, other people in the wedding industry. And are they going to book you for their wedding? No. So what's the point? Do you know what I mean? It's all for me about, like you say, entertaining an audience that are going to book you to be a wedding photographer, because you've got
Mhm.
to have an end goal at the end of the day. And like you said before, I think people get so emotionally attached to pieces of content as well. They'll take a photo at a wedding, they'll absolutely love it, and if it doesn't perform well on social media, that'll then have a negative effect on their ego in a way. And I think they're thinking about it all wrong. I find that on a wedding day, I'll do say it'll be 20% of the photos will be for me, but the other 80% are led for the couple. And that's really important, a fact. And, often those 20%, if I shared them, the ones for me, they wouldn't go down very well because no one really enjoys them or anything. So they've got to have, I always feel like they've got to always have a steer back to what the couple are after. So people who just share documentary photos who then complain that they're not getting enough traction with things like that, like you say, people are only seeing that one photo and they can only judge you on that one photo or that one piece of content. So if it's not strong enough, and documentary is a really hard sort of genre to understand if you're not in the wedding photography industry, then you're only going to ever do so well, aren't you?
So one thing is, it's for me is and it's going back to like the content and posting on social media, because a lot of the time that, and let's just use a videography example here, because it's a lot of videographers will do this. They'll create a show reel, and then they'll start the first 6 to 10 seconds fading in from a black screen, then the logo appears, and then they'll use that as the content on social media. Now, if you don't grab someone's attention in the first couple of seconds on social media, you've lost them. So if you're starting with like this black screen coming in, yes, your show reel after that might be absolutely fantastic and it might look great. But if you're not grabbing someone's attention in the first 3 seconds, they're not going to see the rest of your content. That's why we really focus on making your content look social. So when you're doing like your 80-20, so like 80% of the content and for the couple, and then 20% for yourself. Like I know when I'm shooting weddings that I've always got like a social media head on, and I'm thinking, right, how can I frame this in a way that I can use on social media?
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and, and it is a real thought process that people have to have, because just posting your best content isn't necessarily what people want to see. They want to see that after you've grabbed their attention with the kind of social media style stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Like, there's a reason why I had my year review from Pick Time, which is who I host my galleries with the other day, and they gave me a breakdown of how many portrait photos I'd uploaded compared to landscape photos this year. And I was quite surprised because I was a photographer who only ever exclusively took landscape photos at one point. But because of social media, I saw that there was a need for portrait, and I understood that it's going to be a long time before anyone's consuming content through a landscape phone.
Mhm.
So I understood that, and then I also understood the also traditional need for things like family portraits to be shot in portrait, because let's face it, at the side of a lot of people's beds is a portrait photo frame ready for that photo of them
Yeah.
and their son on the wedding day, sort of thing. So I had a big hard look at myself, and then I was like, yeah, I need to do more of this. And a lot of the time now, I will take an extra sort of step back to, sort of give it a bit of social media grace in a way, and allow me to get that extra sort of use out of that piece of content. But yeah, what you said is so true as well. Like, people think that people's attention spans are so long on social media, and they're just not. You've got to grab them so fast. And it's rough out there, and your nurtured piece of, end of 2023 content, my big show reel at the end of the year isn't going to be seen that much because it's just too long. It's just too
Yeah.
long.
And it's always the content that you've spent the least amount of time on that does the best. You spend
Exactly.
hours and hours doing
Exactly.
this editing. Um,
Exactly.
so all of the stuff that you've done in the growth on social media, I know that you mentioned that you've got a workshop coming up. I don't know if do you just want to tell everyone a little bit about the workshop and what's included and what you're covering?
Yeah, so I normally do sort of social media kind of based workshops, as you said, with my social media wedding photography group that I run as well. But I wanted to. There's always been a bit of a dream to just sort of host a whole day workshop and talk more about process and stuff as well, because I just love the kind of like non-sexy side of the thing, like the business side of the thing that we're talking about now. So like what I do from kind of start to finish, including things like pre-marketing before the wedding, post-marketing after the wedding day, how I shoot things, how I behave, how I'm, what I'm like on the day, and all these things are like small percentages which add up to me being booked out every year. So yeah, I wanted to do a workshop like that that basically contained everything. I've called it the Everything Workshop because I couldn't come up with a better name. But yeah, that's on Friday, the 8th of March this year. Tickets now on sale at the moment. And yeah, it's going to be really great. And I really relish like in-person social interaction. Yeah, okay, Zoom's been amazing for everything, and I do love hosting little chats with that as well. But I really wanted to host like an all-day thing, and I'm doing it in Stoke-on-Trent. It's right near the train station, loads of parking and things like that. So yeah, it's going to be a really great day, and then there'll be a little social evening afterwards. So yeah, it's on sale literally yesterday. So yeah, and that
Well,
was
anyone
yesterday being
anyone
the 3rd
interested in
of
that,
Jan.
hit Adam up on socials and get the link and join his workshop if you're interested in, I suppose, finding out more how you can grow on TikTok and just getting started with social media organically, because it is difficult for people who haven't done it really. One thing that I always like to try and finish these off with, and I always like to ask people when I'm at weddings, is any funny stories or anything unique that's ever kind of happened at a wedding? Because I've got some corkers, but I'll let you tell any if you do have them.
I've got some gross stories, I've got funny stories, I've got sad stories, but yeah, I suppose linking it into sort of what we've been talking about really with the sort of the organic reach. It was probably my first 1 million video on TikTok, and that was when I knocked over this like kind of flower piece during a mid ceremony at a wedding.
Oh no.
So obviously mid ceremony things were really quiet, and yeah. I don't know if about you, but I normally have like things like kind of attached to my hip, like a camel sort of thing, and I don't actually know how big my additional bottom is at the time. And I swung around and just knocked this like kind of it was on one of those kind of moon door things, and I knocked it straight onto the floor. And everyone just turned around and looked at me, and I was just a bit like, I was like, do we want that back on, or we're just gonna leave it on the floor? And it's like everyone was laughing. It was just a really funny moment. And what was hilarious as well was that before that, the registrar was like really serious, and that was making the couple like more awkward and stuff. And they were like really sort of stiff and that, and they were even standing like really far apart as well. And the registrar just didn't stop for a second to say, "Oh, do you want to get closer?" and everything. And I was like, ugh, like because I just knew that none of my photos would have any like emotion in them because we were standing so far apart. After that, it was almost as though like someone had just like thrown a piece of glassware and just smashed everything and just broke all the silence. And everyone then was just sort of like so much more at ease, and you can see a clear difference in the photos in the gallery of when like pre bum knocking flower over to post bum knocking flower over from me. And yeah, and then the rest of the day everyone was just like so chilled with it. And I know at another wedding that might have gone down bad, but I just have the kind of couples who are just like love that kind of stuff. So yeah.
You've got me thinking now when I'm shooting my next wedding that I use the straps, not the things on the belt. You've got me
Yeah.
in the amount of times it clips when I'm
Oh,
past as
so
I'm
many.
walking,
Yeah.
and you've probably just sent my anxiety levels up a little bit now because I'm going to be thinking about don't knock
Yeah.
it over,
Yeah.
don't knock it over. I was
And
shooting
I'm
a wedding.
not.
I was shooting a wedding on New
Yeah.
Year's Day, and it was really tight at the front, and they had it cordoned off, but we were allowed to put the tripods behind it. But I had a bit of a step, and I had to squeeze past this like I can't remember, like this flower ornament. It was maybe a similar thing. And all I was thinking was, don't knock it, don't knock it. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm not moving. I'm just going to stand here for the rest of the
Yeah.
ceremony.
So tense. And I think like I'm not for a moment what's in the fact that if you do this you will get views and will get bookings sort of thing. Like please do not do it. Like I'm not sanctioning that at all. But yeah, that I put that on TikTok and it did really well. That did really well. But at the same time, when we were talking about questionable content, some people were being quite mean towards the registrar in the comments, and I was like, hang on, she did nothing. Like it was me. Like pile it on me. I want the abuse. You know what I mean?
Have you
So
uploaded this video online?
yeah.
Oh,
I'll send you a link.
right. You need to send me the link, and I'll
Yeah.
if you post the link, and I'll put it in the notes for the podcast because it'll be interesting to have a look at it. I'm going to have to go and look at that now.
Yeah, it's so like badly recorded, and it's not an advert for Insta360 at all, because it was the first day where I thought, oh, I'm gonna try the manual settings on this camera, and I left them on the same one all day. So yeah, I've had to like lift it up a bit, and it's super grainy, but you can still see kind of what happens, and it is dead funny. So yeah.
How many views did that get? Did it do
Oh, it's
well?
like 1.5 or 2 million or
Just
something.
a
I haven't.
casual 2 mil.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not sure really, and yeah, I think over a million videos. I've probably only had about 5, maybe,
That's
but
great. Insane.
yeah. All I aim for now really is when it goes over that far, that's like a virality that then you're knocking to people that are never going to be your clients. So like, I don't really
Absolutely.
want that anymore. I'm more so looking for like the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands kind of views. That's where I'm kind of aiming, because I know that then that content will stay in that position when people search for those terms to do with that wedding venue and stuff like that.
No, it's a really good point because the video that I had over a million, uh, it's easy 60% was fed out to America, and I could tell by the spellings and the phrases that were being used,
Yeah,
and they're obviously never booking you for a wedding. So, and people always think they need to go viral, and one thing that I always say,
yeah,
you don't. You just need to have a few thousand views to prove that the concept actually works. And you'd
yeah,
much rather have lower views with the right audience than a huge amount of views with the wrong audience every single day of the week. Um,
yeah,
and it's something to think
100%.
about. You don't always have to go viral. But Adam, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today. And I wish you all the best for 2024. I nearly said 2023 there, but I'll have to get used to that. But Happy New Year, mate, and good luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate it.